Now, why is Curtis coming on? Well, he's got a new column out. It was on Fox News. It's called "A Major Foreign Power is Interfering in Our Elections, and It Ain't Who You Think It Is." So we're going to be talking about that with Curtis when he comes on. But you know what else we're excited about is American First policies, because they got a fire. They're fired up for the president's America First agenda. And Curtis and I are true believers, as you know, in the president's America First agenda. And they got it fired up. They have a tax cut tour with Vice President Pence that's gone all over the United States. Curtis is involved in it. He kind of sets it up and he does the great panels. I have the opportunity every so often to make the intro and carry it live. It's a lot of fun. By the way, this segment is brought to you by our good friends at America First Policies, the political action committee dedicated to advocating the president's America First agenda. Now, President Trump has nominated Judge Brett Kavanaugh to serve on the Supreme Court. This is critical because Judge Kavanaugh, is one of the most qualified Supreme Court nominees to ever come before the U.S. Senate, ever. Now, he served with distinction for more than 10 years. His credentials are very well known to a lot of people. Judge Kavanaugh has proven himself to be smart, fair, and a true conservative. As a Supreme Court justice, Brett Kavanaugh is going to protect our First Amendment rights to free speech and religious liberty. He'll defend our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. He'll uphold our Constitution as written. Judge Kavanaugh has the right qualifications to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Now it's up to the Senate to confirm him. Call your senators today. Don't be shy. Your phone dials out. Hit the send button, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. Tell them you want them to confirm Justice Kavanaugh for the United States Supreme Court. For more information, you can go to americafirstpolicies.org. That's americafirstpolicies.org. This message paid for, authorized by America First Policies Incorporated. Joining us now, Curtis Ellis. Now, Curtis is also a senior policy advisor to America First Policies and the chairman emeritus. That's a big word. That's a very important word. Emeritus of the American Jobs Alliance. He served in a number of capacities in the Trump campaign, on the transition team. He was an executive in the United States Department of Labor. He knows what's going on. And he's got a new column just out, hot off the press, and he's with us now. Curtis, great to have you, man.
Yeah, it's great to be here, John. It was great seeing you in Des Moines last week at the Tax Cuts to Put America First event we did.
That was fun. All these are so much fun. I have so much fun when I have the opportunity. It really is when America First invites me and I have the opportunity to participate in there. It's really a privilege, and to be, doing the intro, speaking to the crowd, and it's a lot of fun. And I tell you what, I think I told you this. Now, I've been to like 4 of these, but the last 2, the vice president, he's got a little spring in his step. I mean, he was the last 2, what I see him in Wheeling and now Des Moines. He's fired up, isn't he?
Oh, yeah,
he's pumped.
The crowds are fired up. He's fired up. I'll tell you, that crowd in Des Moines and Wheeling, they were fired up because you wound them up. Your intro, man, you just got those people going. You did what Liz Peek said in the last in your last half hour. She was saying everybody's got to be talking about the economy, how great it is.
I know
what's going on, and that's what these events are about, and that's what you did. You followed Liz Peek's direction. You should have told her that. You should have said, Liz, I'm doing it.
I know,
I'm talking
right?
about the economy. That's what we're doing.
I know. Thank you for saying that, and I did have a good time firing up. And it's easy when you just, before you had a plan, right? You had a policy. Now you have results. Now it's fun. Now you can say all the great results that we're having based on the plan that we have, the Put America First plan. It's like this, and I'm going to get to your column in a second. But when you think about the America First agenda, right? Mm-hmm. Does putting America First, does that mean putting our citizens who are falsely jailed in foreign countries like Pastor Andrew, does that mean like doing whatever you can do to get him freed and come home? Is that part of what America First means or not?
That is what it means. And that's what he's doing. And the New York and the Washington Post is taking the side of Turkey. They wrote this article about Trump tries to face down Erdogan, but Erdogan's not having any of it. And the whole slant of the article was Erdogan the Islamist dictator of Turkey is standing up to President Trump, and that's great.
It is unbelievable that the New York Times and the Washington Post would not be absolutely praising this president, or quite frankly, any president, whether it's Trump, Obama, or Jimmy Carter, praising them for putting economic pressure on a country who's an ally, who was holding an American there against his will with no charges that anybody can find any credibility to. They said he was a spy and part of coup to depose Erdogan. There's absolutely no evidence to that. The guy's a pastor. He's over there evangelizing. And so they got him in prison, and the president says, look, all you got to do is let the pastor come home. That's it. And then we'll talk. Erdogan's not going to do it. You would think that every media outlet in the country would be applauding the president and his position on it. Instead, they're doing the exact opposite.
No, it's very simple.
It's incredible.
President Trump, in that case, is doing what Scoop Jackson, a Democrat, called for. Back in the 1970s, Scoop Jackson passed. He offered what was called the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, and he said you can't do business with countries that disrespect the human rights of their citizens. At that time, he was talking about the Soviet Union and the Jews. Russia would not let the Jews emigrate. They would not. And historically, Russia has just been horrible to Jewish people. I mean, they discriminated against them in too many ways that you could ever discuss in the short time that you have available till 10 a.m. this morning, Eastern time. There's just not enough time. So Scoop Jackson, Democrat from Washington State, said, you know what? Let's use our economic power, America's great economic strength, to lay down a marker. We're not going to do business with you. We're not going to do trade deals with you. We're not going to give you most favored nation trading status. We're not going to give you all the advantages of doing business with America if you're not going to behave like we behave towards your citizens. And that's basically what President Trump is doing to Turkey. But there's just one citizen he's talking about there. It's like, we don't need steel from Turkey. We can make steel in Pittsburgh. We can make steel in Wheeling, West Virginia. We do not need to buy anything from Turkey. So, guess what, dude? You're gonna be a little putz. Fine, go ahead, but you ain't going to do business with us. If you want to do business with us, if you want to sell we'll find out that you need us more than we need you. But please release this pastor. He won't do that because they hate Christians over there. They're Islamic supremacists. This guy in charge of Turkey. Don't get me started. Well, look, finally though, and the American media just can't accept that. The corporate media, the hate Trump media. But finally, look at this. I was listening to the newscast at the top of the hour, John, and we found one illegal immigrant that the ACLU is not standing up for when he got deported. Did you catch that on the newscast?
The murderer?
The Nazi war criminal.
Oh, the Nazi war criminal, yes.
The 95-year-old Nazi war criminal.
Yes, I did see that.
Concentration camp guard getting deported. And finally, he lied to get in the country. Right? Finally, we found
and he's been
an
here,
illegal immigrant that the ACLU and the CNN and the rest of them aren't screaming and kicking and jumping up and down and crying for.
I know, right? So he got in here in 1950. He lied to get in. He's been here, I don't know how many years, right? 68 years. So,
he built a life here. He's been paying taxes. Oh, my God.
I know. He's got a family.
He has a family.
He's
How
part
can
of
we deport him? This is horrible.
He's part of the fabric of the community.
Right. His child is a valedictorian in high school.
There was another one I got the other day. Was driving his wife to the hospital to have a baby, and so they chased him down, and he was speeding, and they run his papers, and he's wanted for murder.
Right.
But it was like okay because
living a nightmare. How dare he do that?
How dare they?
Please get over yourselves.
The thing is just ridiculous. We're with Curtis Ellis. He's a senior policy advisor of America First Policies, and he is with us here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Your column, a major foreign power is interfering in our elections, and it's not who you think. It's not Russia?
Well, it is a nuclear-armed rival, our primary adversary in the world, and they are blatantly trying to swing the election here in November. They are targeting voters in red states, in swing states. They want they're trying to really affect regime change. We're talking about China, and they're open about it. I mean, here's another example of the media is taking the side of China in many cases, or certainly they're openly acknowledging it. Look, and as a matter of fact, I was talking to Steve King about this when we were in Des Moines, Congressman King. But look, we all, you can read it in the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, everybody, they've all been wringing their hands and essentially cheering, like not wringing their hands, they've been clapping their hands, saying China has put in billions of dollars worth of tariffs against soybeans, and the farmers are going to turn against Trump. Oh, my gosh, look at that. They've put tariffs against bourbon because Mitch McConnell's state of Kentucky makes bourbon. They're trying to change the legislative agenda in the U.S. Senate and get the Senate to vote against tariffs. Look at that. They've got tariffs against Harley-Davidsons made in Wisconsin to change the voters' sentiment in Wisconsin. These are all swing states. And it's like, excuse me, why don't you add... They're blatantly trying to interfere in our elections. The sky is falling. This is horrible. This is a threat to our democracy, a direct attack on our democratic system. Don't hold your breath waiting to hear them say that, because they won't say it.
They're not going to say it. And, you know, you're talking about the $50 billion in tariffs that China has slapped on U.S. manufacturers, it carefully targeted to swing states in swing districts, right? I mean, you can't get more blatant election interference than this from China. They're targeting congressional districts with tariffs to turn the election, and not a peep out of the mainstream media.
You don't hear anything from Chuck Schumer. I don't see Adam Schiff jumping up and down. You know, your Senator Mark Warner, I haven't heard him say a word about this. Dick Durbin, little Dickie Durbin, he's the worst. I mean, this guy was out there giving interviews to ABC News saying, you can't call it Russian meddling in election. Meddling is like too small, small potatoes. This is major interference in the midterms, and this is outrageous. So what did he do when China does this blatant, obvious, avowed, acknowledged attempt to change the outcome of the midterm elections? What does Dick Durbin do? He sides with China. China is trying to take over the U.S. rail car industry, the manufacture of railroad cars and mass transit cars like trolley cars and, subway cars. They have sold that great patriot Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, who has done more for white supremacists than anybody I can imagine, because he's allowing the wholesale slaughter of his African-American population through his ridiculous no law and order policies. But Rahm Emanuel made a deal with China to buy 500 subway cars from China. And China is producing these cars in China and is deliberately subsidizing its industry so it can undersell any other producer of rail cars, of subway cars in the world. So Rahm Emanuel is siding with China. So Dick Durbin introduces an amendment in an appropriations bill in the Senate that would not allow that would allow U.S. taxpayer dollars be used to buy these railroad cars from China. Right. Now, one little detail here is when President Trump slapped tariffs on Chinese products, after an investigation which absolutely determined which products are being subsidized by the Chinese government, railroad cars were on the list. Yep. So little Dickie Durbin goes and tries to undo it, and he failed, as he does in so many things. He failed. He took the side of China, trying to make sure that your tax dollars are being used to help China in its attempt to take over the American railroad car industry.
Through subsidizing the production of railroad cars. And then they say, well, there's going to be a plant in the U.S. It's not even a plant, right? It's a steel structure, and all they do is they put the panels of the rail cars together with a drill. That's all they do. They're not made here. They're simply assembled. It's
all the high-value jobs, all the skilled jobs,
they're in China.
The know-how of how to make a railroad car, that's all done in China. Here they're just snapped together. It's like Legos. You get a Lego plant.
Exactly.
So, by the way, I said I was talking to Steve King about this, Congressman King, about the tariffs. I said, so what are you hearing out there as he goes around Iowa? And he says, the farmers are 100% behind President Trump. They understand this is a problem, has to be dealt with. They're glad President Trump is finally dealing with it.
Right.
They are ready. They understand there may be a little short-term pain, but it's got to be done. And they are sticking with the president. So the farmers aren't buying the garbage from China. They're not playing along with China. They understand what's at stake here. And, this is like you talk to cops and they'll tell you one of the most dangerous calls to answer, to go on, is a domestic disturbance call. They'll go, go to 301 Grove Street. There's a loud argument going on, and they get there, and the husband and wife are arguing with each other. They knock on the door. The cop shows up, and the couple stops arguing, and they go after the cop. They say, well, "Get out of here! What are you doing? This is none of your business." Right. So it doesn't matter. The media can't react that way. The Washington press corps doesn't have such an instinct of like, let's stick together here. Right.
Exactly.
You've got an outside interference. I don't care how you feel about the president's trade policies. If you got an outside country coming in, trying to butt into the argument and influence it, you put your differences aside and you say, hey, get out of here. What are you doing? None of your business. We'll settle this ourselves. It's just unbelievable, the hypocrisy. I mean, this is a matter of national sovereignty, an attack on our democracy. What are you doing? The World Trade Organization lays out very specific reasons why you can impose, why members, of which the U.S. and China are both members, why you can impose tariffs.
Right.
If the imports are being subsidized, if it's a threat to your national security, if the industry being affected by the imports is being threatened, and that industry is important to national security, and if there's a surge, a huge increase in imports in a particular category that's disrupting your employment and your economy, you can put a tariff on it. Interfering in another country's elections is not on the World Trade Organization list of why you can do tariffs, And so all these great defenders of the World Trade Organization and the rules-based world trading system, again, they're not speaking up. They're not saying, China, what are you doing? This is insane. This is wrong. No. Instead, you got people from the Cato Institute actually cheering China on. And if you read my column, you'll see the link to where this guy named Daniel Eikenson, one of the big mouthpieces for the Libertarian Cato Institute, funded by the Koch brothers, free trade globalists, is saying he welcomes China's attempt to change our election outcome. It's like, dude, wake up.
The hypocrisy, the duplicity is stunning here. But I want to get back to something you said, Curtis Settles. I've only got a minute, and I want to reiterate this. Both of us in Des Moines had a chance to talk to Congressman Steve King from Iowa. And I also happened to be there doing my radio show when he was interviewed by the Des Moines Register, I believe, and several of the TV stations. And in all three instances, he was asked about these China tariffs and the effect on farmers. And this is important. And Steve King said, look, he said, and he used this word. He said there might be a little short-term disruption. He said, but our constituents understand the importance of putting America first and the long-term strategy here, and it's the right thing to do. And they're going to come out in November, and they're going to vote for the Republicans because they understand it. We said that to Curtis Ellis. He said it to the Des Moines Register, and he said it on TV. He said it 3 times. And look, there's nobody that understands their voters more than the congressional representative in their district, right?
That's right.
And so I just want to leave everybody with that. It's going to be fine.